It's a great pleasure to welcome back to the studio Botha van der Vyver, who's the JustSolve CEO. Botha, it's good to see you again. How have you been?
Thank you, Aki. I've been well, thank you.
Look, it's a very interesting time in businesses today and how they're looking at their IT infrastructure and spend, etc., etc. How are you finding things out there?
Well, since about the beginning of 2023, I would say the market is definitely taking a bit of a turn. You know, there was 2 quarters last year where we were in a recession. So, we're seeing budgets being cut or being stretched over multiple financial years.
Yes.
We're seeing sales cycles or the rate of adoption slowing a bit and sales cycles becoming longer. But we're also seeing now, after about 18 months, the economy is starting to pick up its head with, some interest rates cuts looming. So
let's hope.
Yeah, let's hope. But definitely we're seeing some trends. We're seeing a shift away from cost savings to business agility, and which is an interesting trend.
You know, I'm really glad you mentioned this, because we're going to talk about something that I'm very passionate about, and I've been reading quite a few case studies around this. And it was interesting, during COVID, how, it caught people unprepared, right? And we had this digital transformation journey happening for many organizations. And really what that journey was about was just empowering people to work remotely. I mean, and then after that, businesses realized, we need to be more agile, as you said. We need to, and AI has become a very sexy word. And how do we take our business and how do we get maximum benefit and unlock value in businesses? And the many case studies I've been seeing is how AI and how hyper-automation, automating processes, looking at stuff and the stuff that people are doing unnecessarily and cutting down hours, and that ultimately saves a lot of money. And it's amazing when I look at it and how much money organizations are saving globally, like big organizations. They look at the initial outlays is not cheap, right? But once you start cutting the hours down, I'm hearing stuff like 40,000 hours a month they're cutting in processes, etc. So this concept of hyper-automation is really a big one, right? Can you explain it to us, just dumb it down for people like myself to understand how is it significant and how can it benefit organizations, hyper-automation?
Maybe on a lighter note, like you say, the cutting of costs, from a robotic process automation perspective, these bots, they don't ask for salary increases, right?
No, exactly. And they work 24 hours a day.
Yeah, and AI don't need a corner office. So there's a lot of savings to be seen. But what is hyper-automation? A lot of people don't really understand exactly what that means, but it's basically a new concept that Gartner coined about a year ago, to take all of the automation tools, platforms, and technologies together to say, this is an overarching category that's now defined as hyper-automation, where companies rapidly identify, vet, and implement and automate, business and IT processes. Because a lot of time you only think about the business processes or just the IT processes, but it's obviously a combination. It's all of the processes within a company using different technologies, platforms, and tools. And under that falls intelligent business process management suites, business process management software packages, low-code and no-code platforms, AI, including obviously machine learning and the rest. And then also all of the tools that you typically find within an enterprise falls under that overarching fondle of, how do I optimize my processes? What supports my business? How can I launch quicker to market? How can I take administrative burden away from the people on the ground and let the leaders focus strategically by freeing up some of their time, which will then be like a ripple effect in causing innovation again, launching new products and services and business models.
I'm so glad you mentioned innovation, because all of these processes you talk about unlock innovation. And I think that what you highlighted is very important, is that when you look at the different divisions in an organization, people think that, hyper-automation, automation, it's for manufacturing or it's for logistics.
Yeah.
It's tying everything from HR to logistics it's just bringing it all together, right? And when you look at software development, which is where you guys come in at JustSolve, AI and low code, they all work together in this hyper automation whole process, right? And they accelerate the product development because that's what you want.
Yeah.
You want to deploy the stuff, the APIs, whatever you guys do, but you really want to accelerate that deployment.
Yeah. It's almost like a symphony.
Yes,
that needs to
like
play,
an orchestra.
Yes,
Yeah.
that needs to play together in harmony.
That's a good example.
So we come in and we use a combination of AI and low-code platforms to really speed up the product development lifecycle, not just the software development lifecycle. And if you take an example, like you said, industry example of, let's say, retail, where you've got a lot of invoices coming in from all kinds of your suppliers and that. So there you can typically use RPA to pull those invoices in, automate the finance process, classify those invoices, load it into the different systems so that the RPA bot can actually act as if it's a human, logging into several different systems and processing those invoices.
Wow. So it goes and it fetches them and does it all automated.
Yes. And then where AI comes in is that's now the brain to the RPA side, where the complex decision making comes in and where you start to learn about your customer, because that invoice on its own doesn't mean anything, but the information on it related to the customer, their spending habits, all of that together becomes, with an AI, becomes like a, how can I say, you start seeing patterns in the data. Yes. And you start seeing behavioral preferences, and you start learning more about the customer, in some cases even more than the customer knows about themselves.
It's that predictive analytics, right, that you speak about from a logistics and a replenishment point of view. And it's so interesting what you say about that. You know, the retailers know the customers better than the customers themselves, you know. And this is where ultimately businesses want to be, is that the organization's got so much data on you as a customer that they know what you're going to purchase next. And it dawned on me just the other day. I mean, I know that, you know, Checker 6060, for example, they've got some serious stuff that they apply very similar to what we're talking about.
Yes.
And when I started using their app, say, you know, I think it was like 4 years ago, you know, they've got the thing that says, if you don't have this, what alternative thing that do you want, you know?
Yes.
And you used to get it, you know, fairly often. They've run out of this. You don't find that anymore. You know, how many times, I ask people, how many times on your app do they bring you an alternative because they didn't have what you wanted originally? They know what you want and they have it in stock today. Yeah, and that's what you're talking about, is that ability to predict and replenish so that... And that kind of stuff saves a lot of money. And when you were talking about budgets earlier, Botha, you know, everyone's tightening budgets today. And, you know, you guys at JustSolve help those CXOs understand their business model better and really unlock that value and innovation within the organization. So can you elaborate?
So firstly, we look at productivity and efficiencies within our software development lifecycle. As JustSolve, we aim to use AI ourselves as well. So looking at how we can leverage off of the main models that has been built before, business models has been built before, to help us in quickly generating use cases, generating user stories, the test definitions, all of those efficiencies. We then aim to use AI as well to create initial ideas for designs for apps, and then we give it to our creative people to apply their creative sprinkle to it. And all of these small optimizations at the end of the day result in a lot of savings and a quicker time to market. So being able to reduce that feedback cycle with your customer is key to this. So a lot of people think Agile is creating all of the specs up front and then implementing it with sprints, but that is not really I think what Agile was supposed or was meant to be. You know, I think shortening the iteration between doing something, showing it to the customer, getting feedback and iterating on it is really what Agile is about. And having the capability to use maybe the same amount of people, the same capacity in a team, but being able to do so much more, so much quicker, That is really the product development lifecycle that we've been talking about. Because if you think about low-code platforms, of which we support the Microsoft Power Platform, OutSystems, and Mendix, we these are all enterprise-grade low-code platforms, but they only speed up the software development lifecycle, and specifically the development lifecycle by about 4 times, which is already great.
Yes.
But what happens before that and what happens after that?
Yeah.
The documentation coming afterwards, the test cases, and before that, the creative side, the content generation, the test cases, all of that. So you really have to look at it like a production cycle, where you need to make sure that if there is a constraint, you move that constraint as quickly as possible through the whole process, so that there's no bottleneck in the software development lifecycle. So what we try and do is we work with our customers to really come in as a strategic advisor and show them better ways of doing it, or maybe just doing a sense check, or fitting into their process and augmenting with our expertise and working together in creating the best possible products.
Yeah. No, there's so many interesting shifts happening right now in the market, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned Gartner earlier, and their reports show this shift happening in motivations and the risks for technology adoption. What's your take on the move and what's happening right now, as you've been highlighting, from cost savings to agility and speed, right?
Yeah.
Now, there's obviously going to be impact on other processes along the way, and there's obviously increased concern about the architectural complexity. Is there architectural complexity happening when you move from cost savings to speed and agility? Does much change?
Well, firstly, now that you mentioned the Gartner report, I also recall reading that Gartner predicts now, with hyperautomation really coming to the forefront, that in 2025, so only a year from now, just over 20% of products on the shelf will first be touched by a human at the point of sale.
What? Repeat that again?
Over 20% of all products will only be touched for the first time by humans at the point of sale.
Wow. And that's by 2025.
2025.
That's extraordinary.
So 1 in 5, basically 1 in 5 products you see on the shelf from next year onwards would not have actually in the whole production life cycle have touched the human hand. That is a bit scary, but that is where we're going towards.
No, it is. I just to that point, before you continue, I remember reading a report a few years ago that was done by Harvard, that they were saying that more than 30% of tasks that are done today are going to be done by machines in 2025, and that was a couple of years ago. So you're spot on.
Yeah, so that's very interesting. But like I said, back to your question about moving from the cost savings. So looking at a peer review that Gartner did in 2023, and again in the beginning of this year in 2024, Gartner's got a couple of ways to help enterprises discern, what is the hype cycle, where technology is in a hype cycle. That's the one. Then you've got the Magic Quadrant. That's another tool. But there's also one that they call the Technology Radar, the adoption of Technology Radar. And in that one is the peer reviews that I'm talking about now, where they did peer reviews with CXOs at 147 companies. So it's not a big how can I say, a pool that was used, but it is enough to see a trend. So what we see in that shift from adopting technology, there's always two things. It's always a value factor and a risk factor. So,
yes, because there's a high risk when you're adopting a new technology.
Yes. And so on the value factor side, the shift has really gone from high or unpredictable costs from last year, which was the biggest concern out of the top 5, to what we're seeing this year in speed and agility. So customers are saying, okay, it's a US-based survey and peer review, so cost will always be a concern, but it literally shifted from to almost nothing, as almost insignificant in that compared to last year. So the speed and agility for companies are the most important thing, and the risk factor that's the most important from 2024 survey, looking into the next 18 months, is technical incompatibility or technical complexity.
Botha, I mean, you mentioned your role as an advisory firm, and you guys are one of the leading low-code automation delivery advisory firms in South Africa. And you just, you've got a very interesting partnership at JustSolve with Mendix. And, we live in a continent that's abundant with possibilities. How does this now enhance your ability to provide solutions for the continent as a whole and take what you have here in South Africa and just grow it out even further?
Yeah. So, firstly, Mendix is part of Siemens, which is a global organization. And Siemens, as you know, are quite big in the manufacturing space, and they've got deep pockets. So, the strategic partnership that we launched earlier this year with Mendix and Siemens is really to see how we can address the local market in South Africa, but also in the rest of Africa. And the reason why Mendix is so compelling is that what they've done is they have localized their pricing for South Africa, unlike a lot of the other vendors from overseas where you've got euros and US dollar pricing.
Oh, so it's local rand based.
It's local rand based
so
pricing.
predictable.
It's predictable. You can budget for it, and they've got a very good and clear, simple but flexible commercial model that works from someone that wants to develop solutions on top of Mendix to resell them, which we call ISVs or independent software vendors, right through to customers. And on the customer side, from the entrepreneur that wants to launch their product to the SME market, as well as the corporate and enterprise market. So how does that differ from the likes of Power Apps or other platforms? Firstly, a lot of the companies that do use Power Apps and the Power Platform of Microsoft really do it based on E3 or E5 licenses that they already have.
Yes.
It's not as affordable necessarily for the guy on the ground or the SME and the African market that we're trying to reach. So that's the first type of differentiator.
That barrier to entry, those E3 licenses can be quite costly. And,
yes.
Many of those small businesses can't afford it.
They can't afford it, and they a lot of them are also not necessarily on that type of platforms. They may be on a Gmail or a Google and similar, or a local hosting provider for email, but not much else. So Mendix has just launched a new service that any customer can go and sign up for that supports up to 5 users in your business for less than 2,000 Rand a month, including hosting and AWS infrastructure.
Wow, that's very affordable.
Yes, and it allows them to develop their own applications.
Okay. And how flexible is that solution?
It's very flexible. It's not limited in terms of functionality. It's limited to 5 business users, not developers. Developers don't get charged for licenses. So and it's got one environment, so you can develop locally, and then you can push it to production. So it's really to get people using it and to get people acquainted with it and to show them the power. And then once they are ready to scale and to get let's say a commercial license, then they can reach out to partners like JustSolve, where we will come in and assist them with the journey from the starting out with the basic license to going to the standard and the enterprise or premium licenses, as we call it.
That's very affordable, but I mean, 2,000 Rand a month is something that's very doable for many small SMEs.
Yes.
And I guess that once you start quantifying the cost, you're seeing that this is what I'm getting out of this. Then it lowers that risk. The risk is lowered, and of course you're getting benefits of unlocking the value within your organization. So that's brilliant that there's that barrier to entry that's affordable.
Yeah, and the thing is, a lot of companies are these days launching digital products.
Yes.
I mean, if you've got a company that is in the retail business, or you've got a local spaza shop, it might be different. But if you want to launch something where you want to own the IP, or you want an app that differentiates you want to put it on the App Store, you can then use those type of tools to do it quite seamlessly. And then from there, you can even start customizing your business. And with Mendix, you can plug in large language models that are pre-configured. You can plug in AI and cognitive services from any of the cloud providers, all out of the box connectors with Mendix.
Well, absolutely amazing. Botha van der Vyver, JustSolve CEO. It's always enlightening listening to you and finding out where you are at the cutting edge of technology using low code and how it's really changing businesses and just changing organizations using these technologies. And hyperautomation is really one of those revolutionary technologies. Botha, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Aki.
Thank you very much. There you go. Fascinating stuff. This is the world that we're living in, and it's changing every single day, and it's impacting organizations. It's making organizations faster, more agile. Find out about it. This is what I love about this channel. You always learn something new. Great chatting to Botha van der Vyver, the CEO of JustSolve. Thank you for joining us for this episode of What's Next.